I was recently asked to make a block, a dynamic block, that has the ability to rotate the center. It's a keynote block, and I know we can make keynotes in multi-leaders. However, there's this need to have this centerpiece rotate as so, just in case we have it at a different angle in a viewport, but they want the arrows to point where they're at, and also keynote blocks do not, I mean, multi-leader blocks do not have the ability to rotate that way because they always rotate toward the view no matter what. So sometimes we want to rotate it where it's not tied to the view. So in order to do this, I had to create a dynamic block, and I have these arrows that stretch out as needed, and I have the center part that rotates. I have the middle being an attribute in which I can just edit the number right here. Now the prompt here is right click insert field, because in our example here in my office we are going to use fields, so I can just right click right here, insert a field, and link it to an object. I'm not going to go into the depth of that detail in this discussion, but that's just the field. Understand that here. And since I need to have either 4 arrows or 2 arrows on the left or 2 arrows on the right, I had to make this list, and I have 1 arrow left, 1 arrow right, 1 arrow on each side, as you can see there. So let's go ahead and make this from scratch here. So I've got here some leaders, some lines here, hexagon, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and make this right here. I'm going to make a new block. I'm going to call this, actually, you know what? Let me copy this. So clipboard, copy with base point. Let's just take this into a brand new drawing here. I'm going to paste that here. I should get the attribute. Never mind this right here, because this is all going to change here in a little while. This is just because I'm pasting, and there it is. And there it is. Okay, so what I want here is, I don't want, oh, you know what I did? I brought the block over. Did I bring the block over? Let me explode that real quick. Let's see here, and let me do the, let me see what I have here in my blocks. Okay, so I got this unnamed block. I don't recommend copying and pasting blocks, but I brought a block over by accident here. So not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. I'm going to ignore that for now, and we're going to create a block. So let's use the block editor, or the block command, enter, and I'm just making a local block right now, and I'm calling this one, turn my caps on, hex note for now, hexagon note. I'm going to pick a point for my insertion point, and I'm going to use the center of this whole thing, which is going to be midway between, say, this point here and this point here. So that center of the hexagon is now my insert point. I'm going to select the objects that I want to convert to a block, and I could either retain them or convert them to a block or delete them. I'm going to go ahead and convert them to a block in this case. I want this block to be annotative, so I'm going to go ahead and select it to be annotative. Now I have the option to open the block editor. I usually don't do that, just because when you check that box on, the very next time you create a block, that is already checked on until you remember to turn it off. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I get this attribute now. I'm done for that. So now I'm going to edit this block in the block editor. I'm going to select it, right click, and go to the block editor. And let's go ahead and add some tools here to make this the dynamic block that I need. First and foremost, I need to have the ability of these endpoints to stretch. So I'm going to come over here to the parameters tab, and if I don't have the authoring palettes showing, I can come over here and hit the authoring palettes right here in the ribbon, and I will see them. And this, of course, this is just a palette, can be docked, can be moved if need be, okay? So let's go ahead and just leave that right there for now. I'm going to go ahead and add a point parameter. So use a point, and I'm going to snap to the endpoint of this leader line. That'll be position 1, and I'm going to add about 5 more points. I'm going to add 1 to this leader line. I'm going to add 1 to this leader line. Oh, wrong. I can simply undo that or cancel that. And add 1 to this leader line and 1 to this leader line. Now, I don't have to keep coming up here. I can simply right click to start the command again and continue. I'm going to add 2 more points, 1 to the end point of the leader, the opposite end of the leader line, and one to the endpoint of the opposite end of these leader lines. Now, these points are what I'm going to use to grip from. So I need to add a stretch. I mean, these grips are going to be what I'm going to use to stretch. So I need to add a stretch action to those points right there. These will not be seen, but I need those there. When I get to the rotation part of this, you'll see why. I'll explain that in depth there. So let's go ahead and add in the actions. I'm going to add a stretch parameter. I'm going to stretch action to the point parameter. I want this area to include these objects. Enter. Right click to repeat that. I'm going to add a stretch to this point parameter. I want this area to stretch these objects. Enter. Right click to repeat. This area, these objects. Enter. Right click to repeat. This area and these objects. Now, I want to have the ability for the endpoint of the leaders over here to stretch when this is rotated. So I must have another stretch parameter added to this parameter here. Stretch action, I should say. I'm going to add it to these items right here, that area, and these items. However, I don't want the line to stretch. I just want the items to stretch that are tied to that line, and that point is what matters there. Then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to add a stretch action to this parameter here, and I'm going to stretch it these area here, these items here. Again, shift key to deselect. I do not want the line to stretch. Now what I'm going to do is I don't want these grips right here to be viewed. So I'm going to select these point parameters, and I'm going to come over here to the miscellaneous section in the properties tab. And if you don't have the properties tab open, you can simply right click and go select properties, and this box will appear. For show properties, I don't want to see them. And for the chain reaction, I need that to be set to yes. So therefore it's chained and linked to these items over here. And the number of grips, I want that to be set to 0. Now, I would add the attribute, but I've already got the attribute created. If you do not know how to create an attribute, the command is attdef for define attribute or attribute definition. You give your attribute a tag, you give it a prompt, and you can even have a default if you want. You know, James, we'll just use James, okay? I usually choose middle center. I choose the style I want, and I choose the text height I want. In this case, it's just 06. And I'm going to drop it right there. And if you look at this, when I bring this into my drawing, it's going to have a default name of James. The prompt will be name, and the default is set to tag. Now, I don't need this because I've already got this one right here created. So I'm just going to erase this one, just showing you how to create an attribute. So now what I want to do is come over here to the parameters tab. I want to add a rotation parameter. I want to rotate from the center of this hexagon, which is shift and right click to bring up this menu, the midpoint between this point here and this point here. And I want to tie the beginning angle to the right here. And I want that beginning angle at the command line. It's asking me for the angle. I'm just going to hit enter to accept 0. So now I have a 0 as the beginning angle. Now I'm going to add an action to this. I'm going to select rotate, and I'm going to select the rotate parameter here. And what are the items that I want to rotate? I'm going to select all of these items right here. Now, I don't need, so I'm going to use the shift key. I don't need these arrows, these leaders, but I do want these points to rotate with it. When these points rotate, the endpoint of these leaders will stretch with them. So I pick everything in the middle, and I remove the leaders on the end. So now let's go ahead and let's just test what we have so far. Let's close the block editor. Let's save the changes. Okay. And now let's go ahead and take a look at this, and I can rotate this, and as you can see, the center rotates. Now the next part's actually the easiest part, the visibility. Let's go back to the block editor, select the block, right click, go to the block editor. And I need to put a visibility parameter in there so that I can have a list of items to pick from. So visibility, and it's going to ask me where I want to drop it. I'll drop it right here, and I'll have that right there. When I drop this, this part of the ribbon activates, the visibility part. I'm going to go set some visibility states. I'm going to select visibility states, and I'm going to rename the first one. I'm going to call this one 4 arrows. Let's turn off my caps now. I'm going to do a new one, and this one's going to be, I want all existing objects. I personally like to show everything and then manually hide what I don't need. It just makes my life easier. So I'm just going to show all objects, and you'll see why in a little while. So I'm going to do 2 arrows left. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to do a new one. I'm going to do 2 arrows right. Hit OK, and I'm going to do a new one, and this will be 1 arrow left. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to do a new one. I'm going to do 1 arrow right, and I'm going to do another one, and one last one, where I'm going to have 1 arrow each side. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to click OK. Let's go set the 4 arrows as the one I want. It looks the way I need it. So next one will be 2 arrows on the left. Now I'm going to use this button right here to hide what I don't need. So I'm going to make it invisible, and I want these items right here to be invisible. So when I have 2 arrows showing on the left, I don't want to see these 2 leaders or those 2 points, nor do I want to see this landing right here. And I don't know why it's picking all of this right here. It shouldn't be. Let's take a look at what we got here. Okay. I also don't want to see this position right here, so let me go ahead and hide this. And there we go. Now, let's go 2 arrows on the right, and we'll repeat the whole thing. So I'm going to use this right here to hide. I'm going to select these items right here. I want to select this arrow, this point right here, and the landing right there. Enter, and those will disappear on the left, giving me 2 arrows on the right. Now I can go 1 arrow left. Let's go hide everything except that 1 arrow on the top. We'll just pick the top one. And I don't need these items right here, nor do I need that line right there. Enter, and now I have that. And let's go take a look at 1 arrow right. I can go ahead and I'll hide all of these right here on the left. I do need that angle to show, so I'm going to deselect that. Don't need that, don't need that, and I don't need this one on the top for now. Enter, so I have 1 arrow on the right, and then I'll do 1 arrow each side, and I will hide the bottom one here. I'll hide the top one over here, and I think that should give me what I need. Let's go ahead and close the block editor. Save the changes. I could have tested the block within the block editor here. I just find this faster. So I'm going to select this. I now have 2 arrows on the left. Oh, excuse me. 2 arrows on the right. 1 arrow left. 1 arrow right. And 1 arrow on each side. And then 4 arrows to start with. And each one of them stretches individually as needed. So I also have to give credit where credit is due. I have obtained help from somebody because I was banging my head on this on my keyboard with this issue. So I don't take credit for anything that I didn't do, but I reached out to the Autodesk forums with my problems here, and this person here, Jürgen Palme, I hope I said that name correctly, was kind enough to help me out and put his 2 cents in, and I just want to give credit here. So I hope you find this useful, and I will put a link to that chat in the window in the description of this video. So I hope you find it useful. Thank you.